welcome to Phoenixville Library and our tonight's local author book talk. Actually, I guess we should have called it formerly local author.
Yes, recent formal.
Recent. Our special guest tonight, author Bruce Mowday, lived most of his life in Chester County, lives in Connecticut now. He actually covered the case chronicled in his new book as a reporter for the Daily Local News. Bruce Mowday has authored 20 books on history, sports, business, and true crime. He's made numerous television appearances, has hosted his own radio shows, an editor of magazines, and was chairman of the Chester County Historical Society and president of the Brandywine Battlefield Park Associates. His new book is called Stealing Wyeth, and it and some of his other tomes are available for sale here tonight after his talk. Please welcome Bruce Mowday.
Mark, thanks for the introduction, and every time I hear that I say, am I old? I have to be a bit older. Thank you all for showing up tonight. This is what I love about writing books and doing research and everything, and it's getting out and talking with people who like this subject or just like writing or just want to get out for the night. It's just great. It is my favorite part. I said that today. I was at the Coatesville Intermediate School talking with some students, and they were asking me about it. And this is really the best part. So thank you so much for showing up tonight. So I'm with Mark. I think the last time I was here was a few years ago. We talked about my book, Richie Ashburn, local hero. Yep, great book. And with that book, I got to go back to my youth, which is really nice. And because I started off life as a sports reporter, and I thought I had given a book talk on my other true crime book, Jailing the Johnston Gang. And I mentioned that because that kind of ties right in with the Stealing Wyeth that we're going to talk about tonight. I was a courthouse reporter for the Daily Local News, or Daily Lack of News, whatever you can say. It's fine with me. I don't work there anymore, so it's just fine. And I worked there and I also say I worked there for way too many years, but about 24 years, and a lot of those years I was courthouse reporter. So I covered courts and went to trials and probably saw more trials than most attorneys, and it got so bad I was objecting before they did, and I said, Judge, why didn't you do that? But it was great fun, and I got to know kind of the rhythm of the courthouse and the rhythm of how things happen. And it is true when you look at trials and how cases develop, you can almost tell when something is not going right, something is out of sequence. And I tell you that because that really does play a part with the Stealing Wyeth book that I wrote. The Wyeths, Andrew Wyeth, probably the best known painter, one of the best known painters in the United States last century. He is the son of N.C. Wyeth, one of my favorites, book illustrators, one of the first students for Howard Pyle and the Brandywine School of Art. If you had a chance to see the recent exhibit at the Brandywine River Museum, it was on N.C. Wyeth, and he's one of my favorites. It's just a great kind of family. And when I was working at the newspaper and growing up in the area, and actually I was a resident of Chester County for 69 years almost before I left like 2 months to go to Norwalk, so I still consider myself a local author, and I'm down here a lot. But when, we all have a bad, right? You get up, you go and milk for the cereal, something goes wrong. And when I was growing up and working at the local, when I had one of those days, where did I go? The Brandywine River Museum. I went there a lot, not because I had a lot of bad days, but I really loved the place and loved the paintings. I especially liked NC, and I loved Andy, and Jamie's got a different kind of genre, and Jamie's great also. But it was like at home to me. You can go, you can escape, you can get lost in those paintings, and you get to know a lot of them and how they look, and looking out on the Brandywine River there through those great glass, it just becomes a really nice place. So here I am covering the courthouse love the River Museum and all the Wyeths, and all of a sudden there was a call that there were paintings stolen from Andy Wyeth's home, not the River Museum we're going to talk about now, but his home. There was an outbuilding they called the Granary. It was Andy's wife Betsy's basically studio. And that's where the paintings were stolen from. And this is in the early 80s, after the Johnston gang, and I guess I got to tell you a little bit about the Johnston gang because it is part of the story. Three brothers, Bruce, David, and Norman Johnston. They terrorized basically Chester County and up and down the seaboard for a number of years. As the 70s was a big decade. They would steal anything that's not tied down. Needed something for your home? Give them a call. They get it for you half price. Next day, guaranteed. They took orders. The specialty was John Deere tractors. More John Deere tractors sold in this area than the rest of the nation combined. And they also give you a good deal on those. Except, occasionally they'll come back that next night and steal it away. So you're going to go to the police and say, my stolen tractor's stolen? They think so. So they became, there's a lot of funny parts to the story, but there's a lot, mostly the sad part. They were really good criminals, and finally the FBI got involved. They had a grand jury investigation. The Johnstons didn't want to go to jail, so the only thing they could do? Kill members of their gang that could testify against them. And what made this a little bit more than your usual show you see on, Discovery ID is that some of those victims that they ordered murdered were members of their own family. That really kind of turned it. These guys finally were convicted, sent to jail. They were sent for multiple life terms, and I think the whole southern part of Chester County, especially, breathed a sigh of relief. But not all of them went to jail, and some of them went for just a little bit for thefts and not for the murders, including a guy named Benedict LaCourte, Benny. He has a resume I think we all would envy. He was a school teacher, not bad. Chiropractor, not bad. How about a barber? Put that on it, and thief. So he had like 4 occupations that he sometimes did all 4 at the same time. Not a dumb guy, but he always apologizes when he got caught for doing different crimes. During the Johnston years, the Johnsons went to do a break-in and was kind of thwarted, but they were at one of the local Acme's, and there was a whole tractor trailer worth of food. So they just took the tractor trailer and they turned Benny's basement into a little grocery store where they were selling the food out of. That was kind of Benny. Well, after the Johnsons, like I said, were in jail, and Benny was out there, and he was at his good friend's, Franny Matherly, and Franny's wife Nancy one day, and they were talking, and of course he's a big reader, and he loved the New York Times. And there was an article in the New York Times about a Andrew Wyeth painting, an original that was on auction up there in one of the big auction houses, and at that point it went for like $700 and some thousand. Big money today. I'd take it, right? Anybody want to buy one of my drawings? I do great stick. Like $700,000. And Benny said, look, one of these sold for this much. Do you know how many original Wyeths we have across the street here? Let's take one. And that'll be our retirement fund. We'll just steal one of the Wyeths. And Franny Matherly, now Franny was one of the expert crooks associated with the Johnsons. He was actually a fence. He could usually sell anything. And he was noted as such. So if you ever had anything stolen in Chester County in those years, Franny, or a member of his family probably touched it. Franny Matherly thought it was a great idea, so they said, let's do this. So then we're thinking, they think about the Wyeths, the well-known family, a lot of big paintings, a big estate. You would assume, everybody assumed they have a really, really good burglar alarm system to keep the crooks out, right? Yeah, you would. I would. They did. So they said, how are we going to break in? And Benny said, well, you know, we ought to take them out of the granary. I once cut some of the Wyeth's hair in the granary. So he had kind of inside information too. He was a mastermind, but he didn't really like to be called the mastermind of the crime, but he was. So they said, you know, who do we know that can take out any kind of burglar alarm system? And they said, well, that's William Porter, Bill Porter. Bill was born near Westchester, but he had moved to Tennessee. And yeah, he was a productive citizen down there, actually owned his own business. Anybody know what that business was? Installing burglary alarms. Yes, he was, yes. What did he do at night? Stole, broke in. He actually is admitted doing 1,500 different crimes. He was known as a master cat burglar. They really cleaned up a lot of open cases after this case was over from the information they gleaned during this. This is more than just about the theft of the paintings. There was a lot of crimes, a lot of criminals, and we'll talk about Vinny the Meat Man a little bit later and everything. It's an amazing story. Now, Porter had some scruples though. He would not burglarize his clients. So it's better if you got a burglar alarm system from him than you were safe from him. But some of the people he burglarized sometimes came to him to install systems. They were kind of day late. And he said, you know, they weren't always honest people. Can you believe that? Because sometimes they got to see the insurance reports that were sent in for reimbursement. And he said, I didn't steal that TV. Or I didn't steal it. So he knew they were kind of tagged. I get off track a lot, so if you really have a burning question, or you can answer them at the end, because I always throw myself off the talk. But I must admit, sometimes people ask, what's the most amazing thing that you learned during each one of these books? And when I'm asked about the Wyeth book, I have to admit that I think I'm related to Bill Porter. And that is true. My cousin's last name is Porter, and her mother, my aunt, was married to a Porter from that area. And when I was doing all this research, I called cousin Joni and said, Joni, is he one of our relatives? And she wasn't sure because they didn't have much association with the family, but she dug out a document where Bill Porter is named as one of the people that got some part of some family inheritance. So indeed, I might be a distant relation of this cat burglar. So when you leave, check to make sure you have all your wallets and pockets. So that was the most kind of thing that I learned from this book. But they said, come up here, Bill, that's, we got this big, possibility. And he came up, and he, he's always went all around the country to do this. And he trained to being a burglar. He ran, he kept in shape. And he later said, I had to, if I had to outrun the police or a dog or whatever and carry things, he was in good shape and he did that. He also was armed all the time. So he always had the pistol with him also. So this was not a nice guy, that you're dealing with. None of them really were. So Porter came up and he took a look around the Wyeth property and went there one night and kind of looking for if they had guards and, if he got caught, where could he go? And the Brandywine River runs right in back of the Wyeth estate. And he was telling Franny Madrill, who was the getaway driver, he said, look, if something goes wrong, I'm going to head to the river and I'll meet you down by Route 1. So that's our escape plan. But he looked at the house and he said, I can imagine what type of burglar alarm they had. And it might be easier if I get in through the second floor and come down and disarm the system that's on the wall. So the next day they went to a lumber yard, got a very tall ladder, put it in the back of Franny's truck, and they made their way again to the Wyeth estate. It was a Saturday evening, and the Wyeths usually stay home. They don't go out tons, but they were invited to a dinner party at some friends in Marshallton. There's another painter there that I know, Denny Haggerty has since passed away, but Denny was famous for doing paintings of Taos, New Mexico. He was there and some other people. And the dinner host immediately became under suspicion because was she involved in getting the Wyeths out of the place. There was a lot of people under suspicion. So they get there, the burglars, they look around. Porter with his ladder and his white bag to put paintings in, he kind of sneaks through the whole field, gets up there, puts the ladder up, and starts climbing up with his white sack over his shoulder. What image does that conjure up? Santa Claus. And later, he tried to write a little bit of a story, which I saw some of it. It was pretty awful, but he was in it. He gave some of the details of what happened. And he said when he was climbing up that ladder, the image of Santa Claus came through his mind, except he was going to take presents out. He wasn't going to leave presents at all. So he gets up to the top. He gets in the window and he's looking around. He's afraid there might be a pressure alarm or something. Nothing. So far, so good. Creeps over to the stairway, looks down, sees where the alarm is, and he said he's got plenty of room to get down and disarm it. Carefully goes down, and he stops and he says, "What am I being so careful for? It's not alarmed." It wasn't said. Now, the official story after that burglary was discovered was a malfunction. You want to know what the real story was? Of course you do, I did. It was not set because Betsy got tired of Andy setting it off. Andy was so absent-minded, and it just drove Betsy nuts. It was her office that they decided just not to ever set it. So actually they were in there, and what Porter did, opened up the door, took the ladder out, hid it in the field, and started carrying out paintings. Not one, not two, but 15 in total. 7 of them by Andy, 6 of them by Jamie, and there were 2 other paintings that were kind of gifts to Betsy that they liked, and they took them out. So Porter gets a couple of these, and he takes them out, and he was going to take them out to Creek Road, and there was a certain tree around the bend of the road, and put them there. And while he was doing this burglary, Franny, the getaway guy, went down to the Chad's Ford Inn, had a few drinks with his walkie-talkie, waiting for the call to come pick him up. And since it was at a tree, they're really clever. I'm at Tree Street, come get me. And that was actually basically what they said was the code. So Franny gets a call, he comes out, and there was about 3 or 4 paintings there, and they put them into the truck. And Franny says, "All right, let's go." And Porter said, "No way, there's more back here. You go back to the bar, I'll give you a call when I'm finished." And then the king got the other ones, gave Franny the call, loaded, you had these $1 million paintings sitting in the back of a pickup truck with a ladder because Porter didn't want to leave it behind and he wanted fingerprints or whatever, or maybe he paid a nice piece for the ladder, who knows, but they took the ladder and they zip out and get back to the Mowday. So Nancy's up, I'm sure, making coffee, they sit down, they have a few beers, and of course they have to call the mastermind. You remember the barber, chiropractor, teacher, Benny LaCourte. So Benny comes over, and his reaction is, good job, guys? No, that was not his reaction. His reaction was, take it all back. You wiped out the Wyeths. Do you know who they know? They know the president. They know everybody. They'll come after us. Take it back. And Porter and Mather looked at him and said, "You're nuts. We're not giving anything back. We're going to sell them, and we're going to try to sell them tonight." So they get in there, and Franny's calling a lot of his contacts, and Porter's calling his contacts, and nobody would bite on it. I mean, they were charging like almost full price for it, and they're like, "Yeah, that's all right. It's okay." So they couldn't sell it that night. The next morning, 3 of them stayed in Pennsylvania, and the other went into the back of Porter's wife's Mustang, and for the drive to Tennessee. And of course, you don't want to leave them, sitting around the back seat. So Porter took his kids' toys and everything and put them on top of the painting in case he gets stuck. So he takes off. He got about a 24-hour head start from the time of the painting before they were even known they were gone. The Wyeths get home that Saturday. They go past the granary, didn't notice that the back door was open, but they go in, they go to bed, they get up, Andy goes for his walk and does the painting. Betsy had a friend came over, they went out to brunch, and they were going to do some, I think, knitting or something in the granary that afternoon after the brunch. They come up, and they see that empty door. And they said, uh-oh. Walked in, and the woman who was there said, you know, it's like Betsy almost had a heart attack, you know, all these paintings are gone, the space is violated. She's really worried about, you know, what's Andy going to say? You know, what is he going to think? And friend gets her calmed down, gave her a vodka, strong one. And they called the police. And the local police came and said, we knew this was going to happen sooner or later. You know, they told them about the security and, you know, it wasn't really guarded. And that was the day. Frolic, Wayman, you know, Frolic, he was called because he was really good friends with Andy, to kind of, you know, in case how Andy reacted. And the local police were there, and Andy come wandering in saying, what's going on? And they told him, and actually he responded a lot better than what Betsy did. You know, is everybody okay? Anybody hurt? Don't worry about it, I can pay more. It was basically his reaction. It was a pretty good reaction. Betsy, this really, Andy changed a little bit later also, but it really struck Betsy a lot harder. I talked with some of her friends, and she was really the distrustful one. She said, was it an inside job? Did somebody I know betray me? And a lot of her friends said, you know, until they figured everything out, her trust was really gone. It really got to Andy also later on. And at one point, he said he was considering leaving Chasford. He said, I've been here, I've been friends to everybody, and somebody violated my trust. So, you know, it really kind of hit him. It was really personal, this loss of these paintings. The book has the whole list of the paintings. The one I remember, and the one that really hit them the hardest, was the one called The Writing Chair. It was one of the first ones that it kind of reminded me of Jamie, and it was actually done in the granary, in the window. And if you see a copy of it, does anybody have the original? If you have a copy of it, you'll see the window where Porter actually came through. Before this, it was one of my favorite ones. It's a writer and somebody, the writing chair. So it was always kind of one of my favorites. It's funny, staying with my brother and sister-in-law, and they have a copy of the writing chair as you come in. I mean, they've had it for years, and long before the book, and it's really one of the paintings I really like. So that, you know, that is all gone, and it just kind of welled up to it. State police were called in, and one of the investigators assigned was a guy named Tommy Cloud. Tommy was one of the main investigators on the Johnston case. And within a day, the FBI was there because they didn't know if the paintings went across state lines. They kind of assumed they did, which would make it a federal crime. And a guy named Dave Richter showed up. Dave was the main FBI guy on the Johnstons too. It was very, fortunate for everybody because they knew all the players from the Johnston gang there. And they pretty much kind of looked at each other and said, who else but that gang remnants would be clever enough to steal these paintings? And they said it had to be some association with the Johnstons. And they were right. Andy, when he was talking about it later, the theft said, they were really good thieves, and they were really awful art thieves, because to steal something of these famous paintings, you better have them pre-sold before you walk out. And that immediately became the criminals' problems. Nobody wanted them. After it was found out about that Sunday afternoon that theft had taken place, they called a lot of people, including a woman by the name of Mary Landa, who is the curator for the Wyeths. And she has meticulous records that I'm sure Betsy helped out with. They had, photographs of everything that was stolen, dimensions, and within 24 hours, about every news station in the nation and newspapers had, there's the paintings, it's stolen, that was a major thing, and it became immediately too hot. So, what person in their own right mind would buy these paintings? Anybody? Yes, of course, there's always one. And a guy named Guido Frezzo, who owned a mushroom company in Kennett Square. And Guido was actually really good friends with our good friend Benny LaCourte. He financed Benny's going to medical school to become a chiropractor, so they were pretty tight. And Guido always loved the Wyeth and had bought some of the Wyeth prints, and he would really like to have one that was an original. So how could you resist? So we bought two. 2 out of the 15 were sold. They're out. They gave him a good deal. And Guido was smart enough. You can't just hang them on the wall. So he said, to this dice down, I'm going to put them in my back warehouse or in the back of his office there at State. Guido was still not that smart. He goes to Mary Landa one day and said, the Wyeths have paintings though once in a while. Do you know what the statute of limitations is? Don't tell the Wyeths I asked. Well, they did. They told the FBI. And Mary wouldn't answer, but what a strange question. And actually, Benny was with Guido when he asked that question. It was something. So Guido has these 2 hot paintings he can't do anything with and show them. He really didn't know he couldn't show them because Benny broke in and sold them back a few weeks later. And he learned from the Johnson. He sells tractors, take them back. He did the same thing with the Wyeths. And when Guido found out that they were gone, did he blame his good friend Benny? No, he blamed Matherly for coming in and taking them. And of course, Benny just let Brandon take the rap for it. So kind of trustworthy people that you deal with there, with the Johnsons and everybody else. So, the police were really trying to find out where they were, or a lot of tips. They were all over the place. They were in Wilmington, they were in Westchester, they were here, they were there. They were really a fear that they went to Europe. And Wyeth was well collected in Asia and Europe and known all over. Those paintings could have been any place. Interpol was contacted, they were put it out. Everybody was alerted, they were getting all these tips, and they were really getting not much. They kind of thought the Johnsons were involved. There was a character that grew up with Jamie named Jimmy Lynch. I'm glad somebody knew kind of all these characters down there. And he went to school, and he had his drug issues, he had everybody liked Jimmy, from what I understand. He was kind of friendly, but he had a little bit of his dark side. And Andy also liked Jimmy. And that's where the word went out that Andy kind of liked some of the bad boys in the neighborhood. Not that he did anything bad, but he liked to hang around and talk with them and things like that. So Jimmy also knew our good friend Benny, and Benny had slipped something to him. So when the Dave Richter and Tommy Cloud, the law enforcement, went to Jamie, Jamie said, well, I haven't seen him, I don't know for sure, but Benny made this really kind of comment, so that was the first they could go after him. And of course, Benny's get away from me, don't talk to me type guy, and wouldn't do anything, and Matherly is just a professional criminal. He's not saying anything to anybody. He said it'll be a cold day and you know where, or a warm day and you know where, or cold day and you know where. I forget which it is. Yeah, with this climate change, it's just a cold day and you know where before I talk to the police. Well, later in the story, that cold day did take place, and we'll talk about that. He did cooperate. But the police were just kind of banging and couldn't quite get it. They kind of knew the group. And then we have another flashback to the Johnstons. What broke the Johnston's murder trial is when Bruce Johnston Sr., that fine gentleman, raped his son's girlfriend. And the son said, enough of this, I'm going to turn on the family, and he started cooperating, and that led to a grand jury, and then there was, his stepbrother was killed by his father, and it just went from there. They had family members, the criminals kind of turning on each other, and that kind of was a big break that really kind of took down the whole Johnston gang. In this case, there was another group called the Madrils, who was actually related to the Madrileys, and you got Ruth Madrilee, or Ruth Madrilee Madrid, and they were all criminals. And there was this one guy named Wyeth. He was a young guy, and his family taught him the family business. Took a lot of crimes with his father, Larry, who was related to Franny. And one day, young kid said, "I've had enough. I don't want to do more crimes." So, what's a father to do if your son won't listen? You take a bat and beat him the heck out and send him to the hospital. That's exactly what happened. Like with the Johnsons, when Junior was kind of set apart from the family, that's definitely what happened there. And that started a whole different section. See, there's a lot, I told you, there's a lot more to this than just kind of Wyeth. And the police got there, put him under police protection, started getting information, and he told about hundreds and hundreds of burglaries that he did, his brother did, his dad did, other family members did, his mother, his aunt, and one of them, I think it was Ruth, she loved sunglasses, and when they came into her house, she had like 1,000 pairs of sunglasses, and she was a great shoplifter. And when they knew they were doing it, one of the police officers, J.R. Campbell, would follow her. And this was before cell phones. We're back in the dark ages, before cell phones or anything. And JR said that he used to follow her, and she'd go to a mall in Delaware to shoplift. And he would forward her every time she gets to that store, he would call back to his office, who then would have to call the store and say they're right there and they're ready to do some shoplifting. So it was kind of the dark ages, but they kind of got her under control. And but this was again the family, and they went and they talked to the young Madrigal and said, "Do you know anything about the Wyeth case?" "I didn't see it, but I know Uncle Franny had talked about it." So they knew Franny was involved. They knew that was involved, and they knew from Lynch that he was involved. So they kind of knew the people, and all of a sudden Porter's name kind of surfaced, and they started putting pressure. And they had other crimes, so they arrested Franny on something, started pressuring him, went to his wife, who said, "Look, I want you out of jail, talk to him, make a deal, do something." And that's how everything started unraveling. And you had all these crimes that the Madrils did. All of a sudden you had these 1,500 crimes from Porter. Not all of them were the same, other places, and they did start turning different people. As this was all going on, you still had all the paintings out there. A lot of them are down in Tennessee, and Porter didn't want to get caught with them, so he stuck them either in plastic bags and buried them in the ground. It's a good place for a Wyeth, right? I'm sure the mice or whatever enjoyed watching it, kind of hanging them. Some of them, the others went into the back of old cars, and they were kept there, and the pressure just kept on going on. Finally, Nancy kind of got Franny to cooperate. Now, this is a guy that would be a cold day, where he finally cooperated. And he said, well, Penny's the mastermind, and Penny wanted to get out. He talked about going to a trip down south and do everything like that, but he couldn't get away. He couldn't have enough money, he was having family troubles, but the whole thing was kind of crumbling there. And one day he looked out his window, he's in his kitchen eating his dinner, which is meatballs on a fork, and he's standing over the sink, and he looks out and he sees the FBI coming, the state police, and Franny Mowday. He said he knew at that point the game was up and Franny was happy. So up went the fork and the meatball. He said, I've never seen that meatball again. I don't know where it got to. Order the fork. It's a true story. Come on. Out of here. And that's when they knew he had it. That he was in big trouble. Right before that, he was trying to broker a deal with the Wyeths to get the paintings back. And would you like to buy them back? We'll try to get them back to you. We can do that because nobody's buying them. They ended up trading among themselves. If you had a gambling bet, you paid off with the Wyeth. The one story I heard I couldn't get confirmed, was really bothering me, because it's a great story, was that somebody said, I need a ride to the Philadelphia airport. If I give you a Wyeth, will you give me a ride? It was just kind of crazy things that were going on in the sequences. So all of this stuff is just going on, and they finally got it. Now, let's go back. Let's go to me. We'll talk about me now. This is where I come in. I'm covering this, and like every other reporter, trying to figure out what's going on. For a long time, kind of, again, that rhythm, you knew nothing was kind of out of place. Then all of a sudden, something was up. I could tell. And I was working in the courthouse, I covered trials, and I talked with the detectives and attorneys and everybody. And I could just tell by the way they were answering my questions and people reacting, something had happened. And that something was that they'd gotten back the paintings. I'll tell you how they got the paintings in a little bit. But I just knew something, and I talked to everybody, and I asked, and there was just no way I wasn't getting anywhere. And one day I was in talking to the chief county detective, and I said, Chief, what's going on? And he wouldn't talk to me. And he finally kind of took pity on me and said, if I tell you, you can't tell anybody. You can't print it until I say it. And I never, ever, as a reporter, make that kind of deal. I just don't want to. But I finally said, okay, tell me. He said, the painting's back. I said, okay. I made a deal. I walked out the door, down the hallway, made a left-hand turn, and ran into the defense attorney named John Duffy. John was a great defense attorney, just died about a year ago. If you remember the Abscan case, he was one of the defense attorneys in there. Well, he sees me, he doesn't say, hello, Bruce. What he greeted me with was, did you hear the Wyeth paintings were recovered? I'm thinking, if I ran into him on the way, I couldn't make that deal and have a big scoop. But then I was in a dilemma, and you know how principled every journalist in this world is today. At least journalism ethics, I could have justified writing that story. Well, I got it from another source, I could have done that. I would have had two problems. Nobody in the DA's office, detectives, would talk to me again, and Charlie Zagorski would put me in a hole and probably beat me to death anyway. So, nice guy, but you don't want to cross him. And I had made the deal, so I decided I was just going to shut up and wait till the chief said I could do it. So I made a deal, and I was going to keep my word. I did not tell my editor, because the editor would push me to print it, and I said, nope, not doing it. And I kind of held my breath until I could print it. But that's kind of how I got in with that story. Let's go back to the paintings. The paintings are round. The police are pushing in. They were being traded among these gamblers in Chester County and other places, and they got a couple of them back from Salisbury John and a guy who from Coastal had committed suicide finally. They think because he didn't want to go to jail or testify over this. So it's starting to get a couple, most of them were out there. Now we get to Vinny the Meat Man and Cadillac Joe. Vinny the Meat Man actually had a meatpacking company, and with one in Downingtown and another one, it was either Chester or Wilmington, I think it was Chester. And the feds were after him because he was selling tainted meats to service companies, colleges, schools, and and he was also a gambler, so he knew he was going to go away for prison for a couple of years along with his cohort Joe Cadillac. And of course, he didn't want to go to prison. What could he barter with? Somebody tried to sell him the Wyeth paintings, and he didn't want anything to do with them. But now, if he had them, maybe he could deal the Wyeth paintings for less jail time, or not go anything. So he got his attorney to go to the feds, and they listened to him. My book is actually the introduction is written by the two assistant U.S. attorneys who prosecuted it, and it's really good information. They told me what was happening in their office and why they did it and how they did it. If you think I'm telling you the whole book, I'm not. It's just telling you the funny parts. But when they went to the assistant U.S. attorneys, they said, no, we don't make deals with criminals. If you guys want to get the paintings back, we'll tell the judge you helped that, but we're not going to make any deals ahead of time. And they were back and forth, and finally the meat man says, you know, I'm going to get them back, but I'm going to hold one back for myself, and I'll sell it after, this all dies down and make some money. So that was his master plan. And he was angling for the Wyeth to buy it back so he could make some money on the sale also, but they weren't going to buy it, and the feds told him, no deal, don't work with them. And so Vinny bought the paintings and turned them in to the feds right before Christmas that year. The paintings were gone for almost a year, not quite. So the paintings get into the FBI, and Dave Richter calls Betsy Wyeth, great news, we have the paintings. Of course, Betsy is ecstatic, calls Jamie and Andy who are in Philadelphia. They're going to meet at the Newtown Square office. They grab a bunch of prints of the writing chair to take with them, and champagne and food. And when they get there, Betsy said, let's call the president. We can announce to the country that America's got this great Christmas present to return these paintings. And they said no. Why not? Because Porter is still not in custody. And they knew he was dangerous, and they wanted him in custody before they really did the announcement. So they held off, they had it, they had their little party. That's when this thing was going bonkers with me, and I couldn't figure out what's going on. One of the things that kind of tipped me off, Dave Richter is a really professional and good friend. He's a great guy. He's helped me with both books. But during that period, I was in the federal courthouse covering a trial down there, and I ran into him in the lobby. And that was the only time he yelled and cursed at me and told me, back off, because somebody's going to get hurt, just wait. And I understood exactly what he was saying. So it was pretty tense, because Porter was known to be armed and stuff. And they went to our good friend Benny LaCourte, who started all this to end it. And they didn't let it out. Benny was in custody, or Franny, and Benny called down and said, I got another job, come on up, it's a big one, I'll meet you in the parking lot. It might have been the Wooden Shoe, or one of the bars down there was kind of notorious at the time. And sure enough, up he came. And when he got out of this bar, I don't think he got out of the bar, Benny went over to him, and along with about 10 officers, said, please, guns strong, and had him in custody real quick. And being a professional, he didn't really say much. Wanted his attorney, there's a lot of stuff how they kind of dealt with him. Porter was a character. I'll just tell you a little bit before, I have no time, idea what time it is, before I stop and take questions. But this is just kind of Porter's personality. He thinks he can kind of win over people, and he's a criminal and a crook, but he tries to get a little bit away with guile. And he found religion in prison, told the judge so, and wanted a lesser sentence, and he's going to start this youth camps so he can help young kids and, you know, let me out of prison and I'll do all these good works. He also wrote to Andy Wyeth and told him the same thing. You know, I am so sorry. If I knew that they meant so much to you, I would never slow them in the first place. One of your paintings reminds me of my dad. You know, he goes on, and then he tells him about the youth group, and he had a request. Andy, can you paint me a painting and I can sell it? And we can, you know, that's how we can fund this youth group. Can you imagine? And he didn't do it, no. But the story then kind of goes on. You know, we go back to Vinny the Meat Man, who besides gambling and bad meat, also was a drug dealer, and he ordered the death of a drug informant. So we, you know, kind of go into that as kind of intertwines a lot of the crimes from the Maverins and Maverleys and the antique dealers, and one other crime we'll just talk about a little bit. It's really fascinating. The Johnson Matthey Company in outside of Westchester, Painesville Pike, they deal in platinum. Very expensive. It's hundreds of dollars an ounce or $1,000 an ounce, whatever it was at the time. During this investigation, they got a lead that there was platinum being stolen from here, and kind of involved the criminals that were involved in this whole thing. And the police actually went to Johnson Matthey and said, no, we have tight controls, there's nothing. Well, about a decade later, after a lot more thefts, millions of dollars of platinum gone, they found out that, yeah, these guys were stealing platinum out of the plant. A lot of other people involved, but how they did it, they had tight controls. You always search going in and out, except the janitors in the rooms. You know, they could unscrew, put a little bit in, screw it up, and they weren't checked, and they walked out. So that's that and some other devices to get it out. But that was also going on. Some other people, kind of prominent people, were also involved. A nice guy bartender Billy, who actually bartends in Westchester today, nice guy, I talk to him all the time. He actually went to jail because he was the one running the platinum from Chester County into jewelers in Philadelphia. It's amazing where this story went. But it's kind of that germ is right there with the Wyeths, and the book talks about, you know, what I talked to you today, but also in a lot more detail. It talks about the Wyeths. It talks about the whole theft and how really kind of you can see elements of this theft that took place in a lot of other thefts and some of the other thefts of the Wyeth paintings. So I try to cover kind of the art field and the criminals and everything in the book. Now, how can you go wrong? You know, the art and true crime. It just kind of goes together. That's the book in basic. I'll take questions, and I'm here for a while. If you have any questions. Yes, sir.
How long did you have to sit on the story before you could publish it?
Good question. How long did I have to sit in the story? It seemed like a decade, but it was about a week before they had it set up. Because, you know, I'm looking at it thinking, my editors would have fired me if they figure out, you know, I had known about this for a week and the competition got it. But true to the word, you know, kind of let us all know that when it was going. But it was a nerve-wracking week, but it was the right call to do.
Where are the Johnsons now?
Where are the Johnsons now? One of the victims was Bruce Johnston Jr. He was actually shot in an ambush by his uncles, the brothers of Bruce Johnston Sr., Norman and David. And he was wounded 9 times but survived. His girlfriend, the one that was raped, was actually shot once in the chin and died in that ambush. He is, if you want to talk to him now, he's in prison. He was out, in and out, and he married another girl named Robin. First, his girlfriend was named Robin. They were caught breaking into a pharmacy coming through a skylight. His big claim, he thought he had a great way back to make some meth, which some other criminals told me it wasn't very good. But he was proud of this, and he was finally caught, and he's serving 10 to 20 years in the state prison. That's Bruce Johnston Jr. Sr. was convicted of 6 counts of murder, He's a guy I actually spent 2 hours in a jail cell with one night doing an interview with him. He's 5 in prison. I think he did 10 murders. Some people think he did more. I'm convinced he did 10. Norman Johnson. Norman's back in prison. He was convicted of 4 counts of murder, serving 4 consecutive life term. In 1999, he broke out of prison and for 3 weeks kind of terrorized up and down here. I don't know why he came back to this. I do now, but I said, you know, it was me. This last place I come back. But he was cited around here so many times. They put police protection under the prosecution team. They said, you have no choice. We're going to give you around the clock police protection. Some of the witnesses took off until they captured him. He had been in jail at that point from 1980 to 98 for about not quite 20 years. The world kind of passes you by in there. He could only steal old cars. Didn't know how new ones left. Couldn't operate an ATM machine. Had trouble with gas pumps, and he's being chased all over the area. Finally, a state policeman saw him in a stolen car and chased him down Route 52, almost into Delaware. And Norman thought he was getting away. He turned into a farm road, what used to be a farm road, which turned into a housing development with a wooden fence in that. So that's how they cornered him and caught him after several weeks in the Lamb. And it was a big deal. He went out, so he's still in prison. His brother Dave, the third brother, just died recently. Dave was the most ruthless one, I think, of the 48. They had occasionally times when they had legitimate work, not often. And they worked for a mushroom company once down there, and Bruce was working with him. And the guy told me later that he was their supervisor. And he said, he asked Bruce one day, why doesn't David look me in the eye when I talk to him? And the answer was, he doesn't want to get to know you in case he has to kill you. The guy thought he was joking at first, not now. So that's where the 3 Johnsons, Benny just recently died, as did Maverick, actually, in the last couple of months. Nancy's still out there. A lot of the Madrons are still out there. And the grandson, I'm told, of the Johnsons is out doing the family business as we speak. So you're not safe. Yes?
Has this book or any of your other works been optioned for any movies at all?
I can't tell you the number of times I've had people come up and actually, I'm supposed to get it off on this, but with the movie stuff, you know, I know publishing, I don't know movies, except I know that movies are really difficult. Everybody has seen this even before, so this should be a movie, I want to do it, this and that. And there's somebody actively trying to do it, but have they not? And actually, one of my Civil War books, just recently, a producer I called wants to take a look at it, and I haven't heard back from him. Are you a producer? Would you like to?
I do some screenwriting, that's how.
Oh, good. Well, give me a card when you finish. I might need it. I've been on Discovery ID and the Real Z network with the Johnsons. My book was used for hour-long shows for those. Pennsylvania Cable Network. They're great. I love them, and they rerun stuff. And I saw an old friend of mine yesterday at Chad's 4 Days, and she came up to me and she said, I had to come see you because I saw you on TV about midnight one night this week. It reminded me that there would be a show that they reran. Actually, the one we did with Schiffer, the J. Howard workbook. And I've done a couple of book talks, and I'm going to do a book talk there on No Bias. Yeah. Yes?
How much the mushroom guy who purchased the 2 wives, any idea how much he paid for those?
It wasn't much. The prices kept coming down, and sometimes they trade a car or something with it, but I think it's probably, if I remember, I think it's in the book, but it's less than $20,000. It wasn't the price of the wives. Yes?
What year was the actual robbery?
I think it was 1982, if I remember it. In '83, they got the announcement. They had a big press conference down at Newtown Square at FBI. I was there, and there's this great photograph of Betsy kind of beaming with her eyes and pointing at Dave Richter, the FBI guy, and said, "You're responsible." And Dave had that, our photographer was there and got this great photo, and it's been on his wall forever. I like it because it was my story, so I had a byline, so it's on the wall also. Yes?
Did Mr. Frezzo go to jail?
Yes, he did.
Yay.
Yes, he did. Mr. Frezzo did go to jail. He fought it, but he was convicted, and he did go to jail. A lot of people went to jail. There was a couple that were involved, kind of, not with the Wyeth, but with the Wyeth and Mowday, actually kind of skated. And one of them skated because the one guy committed suicide and didn't testify. I think Salisbury John. There's a lot of great nicknames in there. Vinny the Meat Man, Salisbury John, Joe Cadillac. It's a lot of, but he got off because of suicide. Yeah, you?
Sorry, were any of the paintings damaged?
Yeah, that's amazing. You would think being transported and buried that they could get some damage. The report back was a couple of them had a few minor things, and Betsy actually made the comment they were returned in better condition than some museums from So minor damage, but they were actually miraculous.
Did you sit down and talk with any of the Wyeths or interview them for your book?
I was there at the press conference, and I wanted to do this book a while ago, as you can imagine, and I'll tell you why it was delayed. A lot of the police would not testify, nor or would talk to me, nor the Wyeth family, unless the Wyeth said it was okay. And for a number of years, Betsy did not want anything else done on it because she was afraid somebody else would come in and break in. And I kind of respected that, but we all start losing our memories after a while, including me, and I really wanted to do the book. And so a couple of years ago, I wrote to Jamie, and used Mary Lando, who I'd known for a number of years, and through that, Jamie said, it's okay. And I promised, I said I'd run the book by him, and he was okay. So did I stand and interview them specifically? No. Betsy was really not in any position to be interviewed, and of course Andy died about 10 years ago. But Jamie reviewed it. Jamie actually helped pick the cover of the book. I think it's a great cover, a photograph that was taken Jamie and Andy. And as we were kind of going through it, our book designer from the publishers came across this photo and said, I really would want to do that one. And then, like the next day, Jamie said, if you're looking for a cover, that photograph, it's just a perfect one. So they actually kind of reviewed the manuscript. They didn't ask for any substantial questions, or any changes. Mary actually said, no, it wasn't this painting, it was that painting, and she gave us a whole list, and just kind of tightening things up. And with my normal process, I do all the research, I put it together, I think I got it right, and I showed people involved, and they always find something that I messed up or got a date wrong or something. So that's the reason why I do it anyway, so the final product will be as close to good as you can get. So did I do it? No. I tried to interview some of the criminals, and Benny, I thought Benny was going to sit down and talk with me right before he died. He didn't. Franny was in pretty bad shape. He didn't. The son, one of the Matherleys, who was forced to go out and do crimes, I did get a chance to talk to him. He talked about the family life. Believe me, he wouldn't want to be a child growing up in that family, the things he was forced to do. So I did get some of the criminals kind of the inside. The two assistant U.S. attorneys were very good. And like I said, they agreed to write the foreword to the book. Dave Richter, Tommy Cloud were really good. I mentioned J.R. Campbell. He sat down for interviews. Another FBI agent, I remember sitting down with him, and he was more along with Vinny the Meat Man and the cases in Delaware. So I had a lot of cooperation, but not specifically for the Wyeth as much. I was actually down at Great Run River Museum doing a private show with this last Friday. And Victoria Wyeth was there, the granddaughter. She just knows everything, especially about Andes. And we were talking beforehand. I had met Victoria a couple times, and she asked me, "How did you get to work with my family?" Because she knows that they're pretty guarded. And I told her the same story I just told you, and kind of waiting and approaching Jamie and getting there with Dad. More questions? Anybody? Anybody? Going once, going twice. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much.